testing might sound like something that is reserved for the marginal games squad, those who are already so optimised that 1 watt here or there could actually be the difference between winning and losing. But actually, bearing in mind that you as the rider make up 80% of drag, it's probably an area that we could all use and we could all improve quite dramatically with a little bit of optimisation. Aero testing in a wind tunnel will probably set you back anywhere between £200 to £700. Really depends where you go, what kind of service you want. However, it's not always obvious if you're sticking to the position they put you in once you get out on the road. And that's where a piece of equipment like this, the Notio, comes into play. So the Notio is an on-bike drag measuring tool. It will tell you your coefficient of drag. As you're riding along, you could download the data looking at various different pieces of equipment. You could compare wheels, you could compare helmets. However, you will be doing that yourself. When you go to a wind tunnel, you'll have a qualified aerodynamicist with you, looking through the data, telling you what it means and how to use it. However, it'll be a one-time thing. You'll leave the wind tunnel, you'll try to hold that position, but whether or not you're sticking with it on the road, no one really knows. So I've come to Halzone Velodrome, which is just outside Birmingham. I'm with Xavier Disley, expert aerodynamicist from Aero Coach. We're going to have a go at optimising my position on a TT bike using the Notio CDA measurer. Now Xavier, you do drag testing at velodromes like this, but you use a slightly different protocol. Can you run me through what that is and if it is something that people can do at home without a tool such as this?
Yeah, so we work at velodromes both indoors and outdoors. When we use the indoor velodrome, we have a live system which will give your drag in real time, which requires a lot of kind of wireless equipment going on. When we do outdoor testing, we use a software and hardware suite which we developed, which enables us to get pretty good accuracy in a venue like this, which is much more consistent. So it's a little bit different from the device that we've got here. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
So I have the Argon 18 TT bike. We've got the Notio on the front here. We've got a speed sensor on the wheel. We're using that because GPS data does have a little bit of a lag, and it's really, really important that all the data is accurate. And then we've got the Look SRM pedals here. Once again, the power data is absolutely, it has to be accurate, or basically the numbers we're looking at will mean nothing, right?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different components coming together to enable us to measure aerodynamic drag. So making sure that every single one of those components has the best precision and the best accuracy as possible is really important. The last part of the equation is you, so making sure that you ride consistently on the bike will enable us to get the best data that we can.
If someone were doing this at home, they probably don't have a velodrome. How do they go about that?
So obviously a velodrome is a really useful location to do testing. It's nice and consistent, and the surface is quite consistent too. If you're doing something like this at home, we recommend that you try and choose somewhere that has very low traffic, a consistent road surface, and is somewhere that's kind of physically useful for you to be able to maybe leave some of the equipment that you've got. But the main thing is traffic, because if you have traffic going past you, that'll affect things quite a lot. So yeah, what you've been doing is just collecting some baseline data. The reason why we got you to do 3 sets of runs is just to check the consistency of how the data is looking. And as long as everything is okay, and we'll look at that in a minute, then we can start to make adjustments and make changes. If there's any problems, so for example, if we've haven't set the speed sensor correctly or something like that, we can identify that now rather than wasting a lot of time by carrying on and collecting a whole day's worth of data and finding out that we need to redo stuff. So it's quite important to get the baseline nice and settled, and then once you're happy, then we can start getting some aero data.
Right, so we've done our 3 runs. We've got fairly consistent data. There's obviously some small deviation between each run because I'm not a robot. So what can you tell us from that data so far?
We found that your baseline CDA, so your aerodynamic drag, is the number that represents how aero you are. The lower it is, the more aero. The higher it is, the less aero. Is about 0.22, which is pretty good. I think that there's lots of things we can do. You've got leg warmers on, that sort of thing will slow you down.
I had hair flapping, which I could see every time I came past as a silhouette, which is a bit irritating.
Yeah, hair flapping doesn't help. So
but it leaves us lots of room to improve.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we can definitely make you faster. We found that there's a bit of variability, but we've got some consistent data. What we're going to do now is just try and see how your CDA changes when you get into the aero bars compared with sitting up on the base bars. And we're going to do that live, so we're just going to leave you out and we're going to swap between the 2 positions a couple of times as you ride around the track, and we'll see how much difference that makes.
What I found quite interesting was that you would expect the 2 aero bar numbers and the 2 base bars to be pretty similar. I'm the same rider, the bars haven't moved, therefore I haven't moved significantly. However, we did actually find quite a difference between those 2 aero bar numbers. Can you run me through why that might be?
So obviously there'll be some variability in how you're sitting on the bike, but we do tend to find that when testing people on aero bars, having all of the contact points locked in means that you end up not really moving around as much as you may do on a road bike, where if you're holding the hoods, for example, you might bend instinctively or inadvertently bend your arms a little bit more, which will affect things quite a lot. The error that we got there was quite a lot. It was kind of double what we got from the original baselines, but at least when we found that there was definitely a significant difference between you swapping from the aero bars to the base bars. And it looks like it was around 40 watts at 40 kilometers an hour. So that means that it would take you 40 watts extra to travel at 40 kilometers an hour if you sat up on the base bars compared with sitting in the aero bars.
Cool. So we've got useful information. We know that I am about around 40 watts as an average faster on the aero bar versus the base bar. However, I feel we do have to take the data with a pinch of salt because you wouldn't expect that kind of deviation between the 2 aero bar numbers.
Whenever you're doing this kind of testing, and especially when you're moving into smaller and smaller things, is to make sure the protocol you're using is correct. So what we've done is A/B testing, where you test one item, then you swap to another one, but then you go back to the original one and then test the second one again a second time. And what that does is it allows you to tease out any errors that you might have seen in the data.
I think if you were to be doing this at home, you would probably want to test each piece of equipment for, say, half an hour at the least. So, for example, if you were comparing a helmet or you're comparing wheels, you might want to go out for a good hour-long ride, come back and then go for an hour-long ride with your your B set of equipment.
Yeah, the more data you can collect, the better. Regardless of what devices you're using to collect it, it's always better to collect as much as possible, because then you can make the decision about whether you have a small bit of error or something. And if you have like a long ride and there's a small bit of error, great, you can get rid of it. But if you're only doing very small snippets, it's a bit harder.
Yeah, and the smaller the piece of equipment, the smaller difference you're going to get, the harder it is going to be to detect.
There will be a tipping point where the resolution of the kit that you're using won't be able to detect a difference. So yeah, once you understand what that is, then as long as you're testing things that are outside of that realm of change, then you're okay. Yeah.
So for our last run, we had a quick go. We didn't have, we don't have hours to kind of make all the potential tweaks, but we had a quick go at just getting as optimal as possible. So I removed the leg warmers, arm warmers, which was a little painful in February, not going to lie. And I had my arms as sort of raised up as it was possible with that bar set up, and my head as low as I could get it. And we did see a decent decrease. So Xavier, can you just run me through the numbers that we had from that run?
Yeah, so we just did one long run for the last setup, and as you said, we changed your position a little bit with hands higher, elbows in a little bit. We asked you to hold yourself a little bit closer to the front of the bars, and as we keep going on about, the rider is the biggest part of the drag equation, so focusing on your position and your clothing as well is going to see the biggest improvements. And what we found was that we got an 8.5% reduction in your drag compared with the averages from the whole testing that we've done so far, which is really good and something that we'd expect to see with the kind of changes that we made to your position. In terms of power output, if we convert that to power savings, it was around 16 watts at 40k an hour, which is a solid saving, I think, for what would be relatively minor changes. There's definitely within the realms of the ability of the kit to detect that, so yeah, it's a good showcase of what it can do.
$1 million question is that, to translate that CDA to the wattage saving, you've got a clever little calculator on the screen there. Is that something that's readily available for the public to get hold of?
Yeah, I mean, you can do. There are online calculators that will let you do that sort of thing. There's lots of things that will affect how your CDA is changing in the course of a race and stuff like that. But yeah, there is a bit of maths and physics involved to return a power output value. There's a few rules of thumb as well. So what you could say is that a change of 0.01 of your CDA at 40k an hour is around about 8 watts. That's quite a useful thing to have in your head. If you travel at 45k an hour, it's around 12 watts. Regardless of what speed you're traveling at, reducing your CDA in a sustainable, maintainable position is always the goal, because that will help speed you up as long as you can get the power up. But obviously, yeah, you'll save different amounts of time and power depending on exactly how fast you're going.
Cool. So back to the Notio. I mean, my initial expectation was that the best way that your average user that isn't trained in aerodynamics, is not a scientist, the way that they could use this piece of equipment was to put it on their handlebars and actually watch their CDA in real time. I'm starting to wonder if maybe that is the best use for that kind of person. What would be your recommendation? How can they best use a piece of equipment such as this?
Someone looking to improve their performance, you're going to need to make sure that you've got some time set aside to be able to approach that problem. Having a device like this, which will automate some of the processes for you, is quite useful, but making sure that you do a bit of homework on getting your protocol sorted and things is the main thing, and we've gone through some of those today, making sure you do A/B testing, making sure you do long runs where as possible, having a good venue as well, and having a nice day. We're quite lucky today in that it's quite consistent. But yeah, having some time set aside, certainly to look at the data afterwards, is pretty crucial too. So if you're using a piece of equipment like this, getting a bit of hands-on time with it so you can see how it works and how to interpret the data will be important before you then start doing concerted error testing, where you start making decisions on what data you're getting. So I think using it in a race my recommendation would be to use it maybe in races that aren't quite so important, so that you're not making decisions on the fly that might be affected by the conditions that are around you. I see it more as like a self-error testing tool. I think that would be a good way to use it. Obviously, if you have it on in a race and you're not really using the live data, then it's okay for post-hoc analysis. But perhaps if you do your club TT every week and you're looking to benchmark yourself, and it's a consistent course, there's not a lot of traffic, using a device like that, then you can maybe track different changes over the course of a few weeks, change your setup or your wheels or something like that, and see whether you can detect a difference in your performance as well as a difference in terms of CDA on the device.
Well, thanks very much for your time, Xavier. It was really helpful. I hope you viewers at home enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you did. You'll see more of our content. And we are also planning on doing much more aero testing with Xavier. So if there are any pieces of equipment that you'd really like to see tested, any specific items, specific bikes, do let us know in the comments and we'll do our best. See you soon.